Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire and Mike Leno, Dr. Mike Leno. Mike, would you like to introduce our guest for tonight?
I sure would. It'd be an honor. I haven't talked to him since we sadly moved away from my beloved Bay Area. Tony Hernandez, Tony Fury, a longtime wrestler, he's done it all in the world of wrestling. You can always see him backstage at big events, WWE on. He was at Tony Jones' service a couple of weeks ago. I think this is our fourth show on Tony. And Tony and I, along with Icebox, we actually co-promoted or started the very first, what was called Oaktown Championship Wrestling. I actually gave it that name to Icebox. It's now Stars of Wrestling, a lot of success. But Tony is an incredible wrestler, along with Icebox. They have done all kinds of hardcore matches in that promotion. Tony's well-known, a total expert on Bay Area wrestling. So I wanted to talk to Tony about our other brother, Tony Jones, Shooter Tony Jones, a little bit, and maybe go over what's going on in the Bay Area in terms of wrestling, because there's some new promotions, the hot one that's, I don't know if they've overtaken APW. I don't even know what APW is doing. So let's get right into it, Tony. Maybe we start, I hate starting on a down note, because we're celebrating the life of Shooter Tony Jones, who, man, what a great guy he was. What a class amateur at San Francisco State University he was, and an all-around class human being. But let me get your thoughts on Tony, because you kept a lot of people informed of what was going on.
Yeah, I realized Tony Jones had his final match on our Stars of Wrestling show on June 15, 2022. He got us Sabu. He booked Sabu for us. So, and he wanted to do one more match. His son could see him. So we booked him on the show. I think we paired him up with Kenny King from TNA. So his last match was on our show, and we booked him again on our following show, which was supposed to be in November. But he called off on it because he said he was not feeling well, so he didn't show up for that. So technically, his last match was on our show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys have really done quite a lot of stuff now. Stars of Wrestling is still promoting, correct? I don't know if they took a little time off.
Yeah, we've taken about a good year, just over a year off now. At the building we're running, I think they're doing some renovations, and so we're just waiting to find out when we can get back in there.
What building do you use? What building do you guys use?
We're building the Alameda Point Gym in Alameda.
That's very nice, then.
Yeah.
Sounds like
I like that because it was right on the water. It was beautiful. It reminded me of where ECW had one of the pay-per-views that I shot in Asbury Park, right on the water.
Yeah,
and it was beautiful. And the most diverse, I often said that, not just because you guys are friends, but I said it was one of the most diverse locker rooms I'd ever seen, from Carlito Colon, who was a regular, to Bobby Lashley, who was a regular, to Boogeyman. There was a lot of great guys, some guys that Russ had known and actually managed against from APW, so it really was Stars of Wrestling. Yeah. And I think early on, so that was a beautiful venue too. So are you guys just waiting until it reopens, or are you going to maybe try for another venue in the meantime?
Yeah, the place they run it for, it's they do a lot of the basketball games for the school there, and for a lot of schools there. So they kind of worry about the floor when it comes to the ring setup there. So, and usually they got a lot of tournaments, and so we have to wait to a certain time period, like towards August, somewhere around there, before we can go back in and do shows.
So Tony, tell me, how did you get started in wrestling? What got you? What are your roots in it, and how did it all get started for you?
Okay, so I've always was a fan. I was a fan from my early teens. I'm 53 now, so I started watching wrestling 10, 11, 12. When I was 15 years old, my mom used to work at the Holiday Inn near the Hagenberger Road there. And there was a TV taping that day at the Coliseum. I accidentally, I went to go pick her up, and I got there a little early, when I saw some of the boys pull up, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know they were staying there. But the first 4 wrestlers that I saw parked right behind me while I was sitting in the car, Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Outlaw Ron Bass, and I believe it was I can't remember who the 4th guy was, but I just remember Nikolai, Iron Sheik, and Outlaw Ron Bass getting out of the car. And I followed them after they went up to the rooms to the 2nd floor, and down by the pool area, I saw a whole bunch of other guys laying at Valentine were there. So I was like, wow, they're staying here. Okay, that's pretty cool. So this is during the time which Mike, you might remember, where this is when WWF used to run monthly in the Bay Area. It was 1 month Oakland, 1 month Cow Palace, 1 month Oakland, 1 month Cow Palace. And I just started going periodically there just to grab pictures, get autographs. And a lot of the guys kind of took a liking to me. They remembered me. This pre-internet, pre-cell phones. The guys would ask the lobby people, hey, is there a place to eat? Is there a gym? Yeah, so I offered a ride to some of the guys to go to the gym, and they in return would give me tickets to the show. So I got, pretty much I befriended Owen, Wayne Bloom, and Mike Enos. So every month they'd come by, I'd pick them up, and then every once in a while they'd ask somebody else, hey, can Bulldog come? Yeah, no problem. I'd go, hey, can Luis Piccoli come along? Sure, not a problem. Then I would do the whole California loop with them. It'd be they fly into either Oakland or San Francisco. They do the house show here. Next day they'd go to Sacramento. I'd drive back to Oakland or San Francisco, drive them down to Fresno, come back, and then they fly out of here.
Wow.
So I befriended them to the point where Dave Hebner at the time was the guy that was giving out all the comp tickets. So even when any of the guys that I knew weren't here, I would just come see Dave, and he would go, oh, yeah, come on in. And he would just give me free tickets to the show. So I didn't pay for a ticket for like almost 25 years, I would just walk back there, and the guys pretty much knew me. So that's why Mike Lano would always see me back there. So
now, how did that lead to you starting your own wrestling federation?
So at the Hogan Flair house show in Oakland in '91,
that was. Let me Tony.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you very quickly because a bunch of people. My Gong magazine editor Wally Yamaguchi, who would later manage Kaientai as Yamaguchi's son, he flew in with his wife and some other reporters, stayed at our home. Wade Keller flew in. He was battling Dave Meltzer for supremacy of the sheets. And we all sat together. And that was the very first trial Hogan Flair match. And I remember it clearly because they were thinking it would headline WrestleMania. It was going to be huge. But that was the very first. A lot of people didn't know every time they touched. And that night, Bill Graham died, so it was a rainy night, and Bill Graham in the helicopter died, famous rock promoter, the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, pretty much everybody all over the country. And so everybody recalls that date, but it was such a huge deal. Did you know it was like the first time ever? It was and right in Oakland, right in our home area.
I did because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw the ad in the local newspaper, and they even posted that on there. First time ever meeting between Hogan and Flair. So it was well known, and I think I might have read in one of the sheets as well that the first one ever was going to be a house show. I think the first one was Oakland. Next night was L.A. if not mistaken. But on that particular show in Oakland, Mike Modest, Rick Thompson, and a few other guys, I believe Roland, were walking around the arena that night, passing out cards to their school for the training camp. Rick Thompson approached me and asked me if I was interested in becoming a pro wrestler. And at the time I wasn't. I was pretty content just being one of the marks and fans of the business. And I was already riding along with a lot of these boys. So I had no desire to be in the ring. But he handed me his card. He told me I had a good looking physique, and if I was interested to, come on down. About maybe a year and a half later, a high school friend of mine called me out of the blue, says he wanted to train to be a pro wrestler. Like, great. He goes, how do I get in? You know everybody. I said, well, there's this place in Hayward. If you're interested, I'll give you the card. So I went with him, and Roland interviewed him, started asking him all these questions, trying to find out what he knew. He said, "Who's your, what wrestling do you watch?" And he's like, "WCW, and these are my favorite, the Steiners and Sting and these people." And then he saw me sitting there, and he asked me, "What about your friend there? He wants to sign up." He goes, "No, he just came with me." So he started asking me who I like, and I said, "Oh, well, I like Owen Hart, Jushin Thunder Liger," and his eyes like lit up, Roland lit up, because he was like, "Oh, this guy knows his stuff. He likes good workers." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You interested in joining?" I said, "No, I'm just here with him." So we went inside the building, and they did like a exhibition match. I believe it was Robert Thompson and Mike Modest, and that's like the closest I've ever been to an actual wrestling ring. They did a couple of spots, did a few moves, which was pretty amazing watching that live and up close like that. So Roland coerced me into signing up and give us a discount as a tag team if we both sign up. And I said, "Well, I guess I'll give it a shot." I've always wanted to run the ropes. I thought that looked pretty fun, and turned out it wasn't.
Yeah, it's not as bouncy as it looks on
No,
TV.
nowhere
Like
near,
that
nowhere
much.
near. Oh. And so anyway, so that's why I end up signing up, and I stuck with it. My friend, it was a little. He had some medical issues, that health issues that couldn't continue there, but I stuck with it, and it was it was a good experience. I was very proud of myself of being able to finish what I did there. I never thought I'd be doing anything physical like that. And I think at one point I would carry my gear around like Roland always taught me. So always take your gear. When I would pick up Owen or Tito Santana or anybody like that, it'd be like, "Oh, whose boots are those?" "Oh, those are mine." "Oh, you training?" "Yeah, I'm training." He's like, "Oh, okay, cool." He goes, I go, "You got any advice?" He goes, "Well, as long as you get your takedowns, you'll be all right in the ring." So, okay, cool. So when I was taking the boys to the shows, Icebox was working security even before I even knew him. He's been working at the Coliseum for years. He befriended me. He saw me working there, bringing the guys, and kind of asking me, "Oh, you know these guys? Are you related to them?" I said, "No, I'm just, friends, and I bring them here, and they give me free tickets." And after years and years of seeing him there, he'd always come up to me and ask me, "Hey, we start a wrestling thing. You think we could do something?" I go, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." And he'd always tell me that for years and years. And I don't know, good 10, 15 years later, I never thought he'd do it, but just when I was getting ready to stop, that's when he came up and says, "Hey, if I get this ring, you think we could do shows?" I go, "Sure, why not?" And he ended up befriending, I think, Kirk and a few other people to rent the ring out, and we started doing shows. And then we got with Mike Lano, and to kind of help out with the deal there. And so that's how we started doing shows.
Tony, let me interrupt quickly. We're going to get back to Tony Jones in a second. I don't mean any disrespect there. And I want to say, too, at Stars of Wrestling, I think it was one of the very last times Shad Gaspar, you remember, he wrestled.
Yeah.
I can't remember if BTG was with him, his WWE tag partner, but Shad, super nice guy. And I went to the service for him when he drowned down here, because we had moved down here in 2019. But that was like, one of the last places I saw and photographed him wrestling was on your show with Icebox. Now, that first show, Oaktown Championship Wrestling, where I fed Icebox that name, and he was hitting me up for the contacts. We initially had booked, and the whole show was going to be primarily Iron Guys, but something happened between Icebox and Frank Murdoch, and then we had the scramble, and we got Adam Thornstowe and Mr. Primetime to come down from the Reno area, and Dick Grimes and Steve Rosano. So it was a lot of guys that weren't fully signed up to any one promotion, or APW in particular, or BTW. And it went well. Shitty location on Hagenberg, if you remember. I don't know what that venue was.
The Moose Lodge. The Moose Lodge.
But it was still a good show, because if you remember, Vic Grimes and Rosano had like a hardcore match, and it was fun. I wanted to touch on Owen Hart, who I was very close with since he was little, and Brett introduced me to him. When I went up to Stu Hart's, because they hired me, Bruce and Ross Hart, in December '95, to photograph, be their family photographer for Stu's 80th birthday party, which was private just for the family. But he put on a huge show at his old venue, his best venue, legends of Stampede Wrestling. And Owen and Spicoli was Owen's best roadmate friend in WWF at the time. Again, this is 1995. Huge snowstorm. You couldn't see. Visibility was horrific, but Owen could drive it. But all I remember, they picked me up at Calgary Airport, is Owen is driving as fast as he can. You can't see anything, but he knew how the roads and how to drive it. Cursing up a storm. Spicoli is screaming. And I wanted to ask if Owen ever pulled any ribs, or if he didn't pull any ribs on you, did you see him pull ribs or discuss ribs?
Yeah, I did. I did quite a few. So I got a road story. I was taking Louis, Owen, and I believe it was Barry Horowitz. We did a show. They did a house show in San Francisco at the Cow Palace, and they were staying in San Francisco.
I remember that show.
Okay, so the next night, the next morning, we drove to Fresno, and before we left San Francisco, I think Louis wanted to stop at a GNC to grab some protein powder and some other supplements, and they wanted to go get a tan at a tanning salon that was there, which I took him there, and we after they were done with that, we were driving down to Fresno, and from halfway down there, I think Barry had bought some expensive cream for like a tanning cream or something. Somehow, Owen, who was sitting in the back seat along with Louis, and Barry was sitting on the passenger side with me while I was driving. Louis seemed to get it and start squirting it across to the front, and it was landing on Louis on Barry Horowitz's like hair and on his shoulder. And these guys were giggling in the back, and then Barry's like trying to sleep and he keeps waking up. He goes, "What are you guys doing?" "Nothing. We're taking our protein powder." So it got to the point where finally Barry got upset with it. And they were pretty, he kept accusing them. And Owen kept saying, "No, there's nothing wrong, man. Don't worry about it. You're just there. Just take your nap." So somewhere along the way on 5 going down to Fresno, there was a really bad car accident. And we ended up losing like 2 hours of time, and we just made it to the airport. To the arena in Selland Arena in Fresno, and we got there just as the show started. And of course, I think Louis and Barry and Owen went to the back, and I think I can't remember who the agent was. Might have been Lanza or I think it was Lanza. Might have been Lanza. So they went and talked to him, and I guess they all got fined. I think everybody got fined except for Owen. Barry got fined, Louis got fined. And then Barry walked in, and then immediately, I think the Smoking Guns were the first match, and they had just finished, and they grabbed their stuff, and they're ready to leave, and Barry just got out of that room with Lanza, and then he jumped in their car and left with them to head back to San Francisco. So Owen got to work with Louis, and then afterwards we left. So we drove him all the way back to San Francisco, and when Louis went back to his room, who he was sharing the room with Barry, he found out Barry had grabbed his stuff and left and was going to stick him with the bill. So, of course, Louis goes, "Take me to the airport. Take me to the airport. He's not going to stick me with this bill." So here we go. We drive to the airport. And I was with Kwame Kamosi at the time. He went with us on this trip. So we get there.
Kwame, legend.
Yeah. So my wife was with me as well. So we pull up to the airport. My wife stayed with the car, and then me and Kwame went in there, and we're like looking, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" Hey, they start fighting. You grab one, I'll grab the other. He goes, "Okay, fine." I remember seeing Barry and Louis going face to face in front of all these people at the airport, and they're just going back. And finally, I guess after they calmed down a little bit, Louis came back. "All right, let's go." And he came back, and he's really hot and everything, and he's upset. And he turns around and he looks at me. He goes, "Oh, by the way," he said, "thanks for the ride." And then, it was just like the most comical thing. I was like, these guys are nuts.
Wow.
So it was just, those guys were always fun to be around. But I could never take those guys serious. You never knew if they were working in that. So yeah.
So
Russ,
tell
let me
me.
just ask this quickly. Russ, let me just ask this quickly because
Okay.
I knew Owen so well. Didn't drive him obviously as much as you did, but a couple of times, particularly from the Cow Palace shows, like I did Brett. And before they would want to go to the airport, they would ask me to take them to their aunt. I think it was Helen's
Yes,
sister and her husband in the really nice area of Oakland. What's that part up there? You know, it's
it's
expensive
like
home.
it's almost like almost like in Piedmont, like
Yeah,
The hills.
yeah, we're super nice people, and I
yeah,
kept in touch with them. I both passed, but Owen and Brett always wanted to be driven there,
yes,
and you could see Owen, the both of them, Owen and Brett, really family devoted. You know, they really love their aunt
they did.
and
Yeah.
uncle. And it
Yeah,
was
I had the privilege of
heart.
taking them up there as well. On one occasion when they had the one WWE show at the Henry J. Kaiser. I think this is when Owen had turned heel already, and Brett was on the show, and some of the family came down. So afterwards, they asked us if we could take. I think I took Owen and Anvil up there, and we followed them all the way up there, dropped them off. And the funny thing is, Anvil left his sunglasses in my car, and
Mm.
between the time after I dropped them off and got home, Owen had left me a voicemail on my answering machine. It says, "Hey, Anvil left his glasses. Anyway, you can bring them back." He goes, "We're leaving here like at 5 in the morning. If you want to leave them, just leave them on the car outside on one of the windshield wipers. It'll be fine." I go, "Sure." So I turned around right back and just left them there. And I hope you got them. I never knew. So.
Man, you had to do a lot of driving for these guys.
Oh yeah, I did. It was enjoying. It's funny. I tell people I got into the business carrying bags without even knowing what that term meant. So literally, so yeah.
So tell me about some of the highlights of Stars of Wrestling. What are the best shows that you've done, and some of the
Um,
top stars that you've had that you are proud to have had work for you?
So the original concept, when we got with Mike, I told him we wanted to do shows. At the time, Roland had his shows where he wanted to just have to be APW only. Then Kirk came around, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm bringing in name talent. And Roland used to hate that. Roland was like, no, we're going to make it on our own. Only our guys are stars. My guys are better than the WWE guys. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. And Kirk was like, well, I'm going to use some of these guys, and I'm going to bring name guys. It was like, okay, cool. So when we started doing our shows, I kind of thought about it and go, it'd be nice to have like a mixture, have somebody from like APW and have somebody from BTW, and even get some of the guys from up north and PCW. And it was kind of a mixture. And that's what the original one, the first show we did at the Moose Lodge, we called it California Clash, because we figured this is really cool to have all these promotions under one roof. But it was one of those things where I think Kirk kind of wanted to sabotage the show, if I'm not mistaken. He called at one point, something, "Hey, I heard that the ring caught on fire." I'm just saying those guys, those are backyard guys. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? But Kurt, and then he called and says, "Oh, I don't want those guys in my ring, so I'm not gonna let you guys use my ring." And so then PCW brought their ring down, and it was a weird thing. But finally, when we did the show, it actually turned out really well. I mean, everything seemed to work out fine. Mike did a great job bringing in the roller derby people, and so it was good. It was a good show.
One thing too, a couple of shows in, Kirk then gets into Icebox's ear,
yeah.
and Icebox, I'm sure he said the same thing to you, probably more so, but for me, because he knew I'd covered roller derby as well since 1970 in Los Angeles. That was roller games, but I would come up and shoot until Jerry Seltzer pulled the plug on the bigger, more athletic, it looked more real, less show busy roller derby in December '73. It was when he pulled the plug, and I'd stayed in friends with Annie Calvello, who was like a co-host on my show when Roy Shire's heel manager, Gary Gearhart Kaiser, he was my co-host the first 6.5 years of the show. Then Ann Calvello came in for a number of years, about 4 as co-host. But Kirk had his good and bad points. But when he got in Icebox's ear, he, like around into the 4th show, which I think was like at a high school in Fremont or something for Icebox, he started telling Icebox, "You got to start charging, telling the spouse, the wives, and the kids they got to pay up." And I told Icebox, "If you do that, you're going to lose a lot of credibility." And he eventually relented, but he would ask me, so I would be covering the Derby, the new age thing, because he came about well after roller derby, the real roller derby, the Jerry Seltzer, the television, globally televised roller derby ceased and died out. And they were two different guys, Tim and Danny, were trying to bring it back. And Icebox was on a lot of those shows, big name. And he relented. But I remember Mike Modest had seen Woody Farmer in years, and he worked one of your shows, the Icebox show, where Kirk was kind of manipulating Icebox a bit until Icebox finally smartened up and became his own guy, which was great to see. But Modest was thrilled, to work on that show, and mostly to be with Woody Farmer, who, a lot of us idolized, really liked Woody. That was a weird thing about Bay Area wrestling overall. In the late 80s, 90s, just to do their own thing, we had three different guys, Shire guys, Alexis Smirnoff, Woody Farmer, and Jerry Monty, doing their own thing. And they weren't aggressively trying to undercut each other, but I would keep telling them, as did Meltzer, if you guys work together, you might really draw great. And Monty at least got in 2 years at the Vallejo County Fair, and he had some big shows where he got paid no matter what. And the fans were all let in free, so he had a couple of thousand people. It was really great to see. But I was often in the car, sometimes with Kirk, and he would tear down Roland's APW posters. And Roland didn't do that, but he'd badmouth, Kirk, and probably deservedly so. They tried doing two interpromotional. You probably remember this, Tony, and Russ remembers it. APW versus BTW. Kirk kind of screwed around with that. Like, he'd come to APW, and he'd tell Roland, at the booking meeting before, "Oh, let me and Jason Styles just do our promo first because we want to go out, afterwards." He wouldn't stay and watch the show and learn and see what a frickin' great promotion APW was, what a phenomenal talent they were. Whereas Roland would go to Kirk's, stay the whole entire time, take notes, study. That's what a student.
There's something about respecting the talent and, watching what's going on. The people who are trying to perform for you instead of just showing up just for your match and leaving. That's always very poor etiquette. And I don't think I ever left a show early for any reason.
Yeah. What I'm saying about Icebox was I'm with Icebox for Derby stuff, and he really started to get the itch for wrestling. I'm sure he said the same thing to Tony. So he says, "Please take me to this APW show." And I went. And long story short, he takes Robert Thompson, no relation to Ricky Thompson, but they named him after him. Roland did. Robert Thompson, great trainer, and I don't know how long he lasted with that, bump taking, but he became a manager for the second generation West Side Players, and the rest is history. He really had the wrestling bug, but wasn't he head of security? Was he head or close to it, head of security at the Coliseum when wrestling and all those other events would come in?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, he was the main guy there. He's been there for so many. I mean, he's still there, but he's one of the senior security people there, and he he was always on the ring side. He was always on the concerts and all that stuff. He's the main guy there. So guys giving me free tickets to things over the years. Because he knows so many of the promoters. They always hand him free tickets, and he usually doesn't like going, so he'll pass them on to people. So.
But, I guess we got lost a little bit in, I was asking about the best show that you feel that you've put on yourself.
So, honestly, I think the best show we just did was our last show we did was on November 5th. We called it, it was the Rooted in Wrestling. We did it with the baseball theme, Rooted in Oakland, but we changed to Rooted in Wrestling. We brought in so many people. We brought in Mecha Wolf, Cody Hall, Moose. I think that's the one Sabu came in to do an autograph signing, and then if I'm not mistaken, Vic Grind showed up just because Sabu was coming, so we had almost like an ECW reunion type deal that night. It was a really great show. So we had a steel cage match with Jacob Patu and JTG. That was I think our best match we've ever had there. So yeah, really biggest turnout we've ever had. So
Did Vic wrestle, and how did he look?
Vic did not wrestle. He just came to say hi to Sabu, and then they decided to. He asked him if he wanted to sit down and do autographs, and he said sure. And so he sat there and gave a few autographs. And
Yeah, I don't think Vic is in any shape to wrestle
he
ever.
looked okay. He looked okay, but I don't know how health wise he looks.
Yeah, I don't think he's. I mean, look at where New Jack is. So I think he's only lucky to be just one step ahead of where New Jack is right now. I mean, he took some phenomenal punishment. If you've seen those dark sides of the ring, it's like remind yourself about like, oh my God, it's pretty amazing that we know someone who did that sort of stuff and lived to talk about it.
We got to bring in Daga on that show too, and I mean it was a phenomenal. I mean we put Daga in there in that match with Mecha Wolf, and they tore it down. So that was a really good match. So that show.
The Alameda.
Tesla,
yeah.
Married to Daga. Did Tesla come up? Tesla Blanchard.
She was. So we booked her. We booked her for that show, and then within like 10 minutes of us posting it, we got all this negative feedback. Just people were blasting us. Oh, I was gonna buy tickets, and we were gonna go, and if you're gonna have this racist girl, we're not gonna go. I thought you guys were better than this. I'm not going. So I talked to Icebox, and he goes, "We can't use her. We're
that's terrible."
So I had to contact her, and I let her know I'm sorry, but we're just getting all this negative, and I can't promise your safety even with security here, and so she replied, she goes, I understand. I completely understand. This happens everywhere I go, and I'm sorry. I wish I could just change this, but it's not. I go, okay, I'm sorry. And so it didn't happen. So
it all came from a thing that she said in TNA, and it's haunted her since. They got rid of her. A supremely talented girl, but poor choice of words. I mean, she's a nice person. I've talked to her at length at those the first Cow Palace show, or whichever one she was in, the mixed match in the cage, which was weird, with Joey Ryan teaming with Candice LeRae. I forget who she was teaming with as the faces, but she made some strong statements in TNA. They let her go, and she's really, I don't even know if she's working in Mexico. What is she doing? Do you know?
Yeah, she's working in Mexico. She's working at, I think, in CMLL, if I'm not mistaken. So she moved there. She's living there. Yeah.
And she's married to Daga, who's a supremely talented kid himself.
She was.
Really good.
She was married to Daga. They're no longer together.
Really?
So, yeah, they broke up earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, or late last year. So he's currently dating another woman wrestler in Japan, and she's currently dating one of the CMLL wrestlers at the moment, from what I understand.
Wow, the days of our indie lives.
Yeah, right.
So to speak. Yes.
But yeah, we did want to, when I booked Daga, I asked if he can contact Tesla, and he goes, well, I only book for myself. You would have to contact her for her own bookings. I don't do anything with their bookings. I said, sure. So I contacted both. I said, I figured it'd be great to have both of them on the show. And they both agreed. It's just like I said, within like 10 minutes of us posting that she was coming, we got all this negative feedback, and it was not good. Yeah.
Wow.
So he had no choice but to take her off.
Russ, ask Tony about, so what is the scene in Northern California now, the hottest promotions? What is it called? The one that's in like Redwood City or South San Francisco? It seems to be the hottest.
Yeah, they're called West Coast Pro, and it's run by a gentleman by the name of Scott and I think Vinny Massaro. They're the ones mainly running that place. But they got a solid work rate show like old APW days, except it's almost New Japan style, all Japan. Yeah, and they've gotten connections where they bring in Pro Wrestling Noah and Stardom, and they got good connections, good shows. Yeah, so.
Didn't they have like Dave Garcia against Suzuki? That was one of their earliest matches. They had this amazing cards. Just stacks. Of course, I'd leave the Bay Area, and these stacked cards would happen.
Of course, right? Yeah.
What is Marcus doing with APW? Because they were always the high end, the quality 5-star promotion.
I'm not exactly sure. I think after Marcus did that APW show at the Cow Palace, he took a break, and I always asked him, "You're going to do show?" Every time I see him at certain shows, he's telling me, I think I've accomplished everything I wanted to do. I don't, there's nothing really. I mean, my biggest show, I think, that's. I mean, I can't beat that. So, I don't know. He may be having some personal things, maybe with family. I'm not really sure that he's trying to take care of first, and then maybe later on. He says he's thinking about doing something. Just he still
It's hard when the momentum goes and other feds pick up the slack. I mean,
yeah.
Again, Stars of Wrestling, you guys are really like doing things in that mode of the way APW used to do stuff. So in that sense, it's not necessarily the name that's on the wrestling, marquee. It is more the what you're bringing forward to the fans in the style of wrestling you provide.
So Kirk's wife, I think, is continuing to run the business, but it's totally different than what you would see Kirk run the show before. Kirk was so anti using other people that he doesn't use. I'm not sure who's booking Big Time Wrestling at the moment. I've heard it's the wrestler that used to wrestle is Jinx with Jekyll's. I think he's the one booking, but I'm not 100% sure. But if they had a falling out with the Scotty Ringer kid that was their champion before Kirk passed. They had a falling out. So now they're using all these people like what we used to do. They're using people from all these promotions because we were using Jacob Fatu and we were using, bringing the names. So now they're doing the exact same thing. They're doing where we left off, basically. They're bringing in people from TNA. They're bringing people from AEW, because they got their connections to Bailey, and Bailey contacts people. And, they've had Will Hobbs and Ricky Starks and Aaron Solo, who came from there. So, it's good to have people that used to go there for the connections, and it helps. The shows are really good,
So, what things do you think you would like to see as far as like things for Stars of Wrestling coming up? I mean, what are some of your bigger plans that you have?
So my thing was I always like to bring people that normally don't come out here, because I think that's the hook, to see people that normally don't. I mean, we've had the habit of bringing in Boogeyman and every show, and he's a guy that people like to see. He just but when Shad was still alive, we bring Crime Time quite a bit, and I always tell Icebox, we got to do something. You got to bring an extra name, but someone that hasn't. So we brought in Goldust at one point. That blew the roof, and that was a really good show. And then when we brought in people like Daga, that helped out. And then we brought in Moose, and he was the current TNA champion at the time. So we had the TNA champion. When we brought in Bobby Lashley, he was the TNA champion. So we start bringing in people that were current title holders from the big promotions on our shows, which was really, really cool. And I didn't think they'd bring the actual title with them, but they did, and it was like, wow, they actually brought the title with them. So we had, forget the, what's his name? He works for New Japan now. Can't remember his name, but we put him up in this. He's the Kratos, JR Kratos. We put him up there with Bobby Lashley, So and that was a good match. So
and with all this big talent, you're always able to get them paid off, and you guys don't ever lose money doing any of your shows.
We come out pretty even, but the last show we did was the one we really broke even. We made some money because again, we did the steel cage. No one, I don't think, has done a steel cage besides Marcus for APW, but we've never done one. So it actually helped out, with the Jacob Fatu and JTG. That was JTG's first cage match ever anywhere. He told me, "Oh wow, I've never been one. This is my first match. This is gonna be great." So, and they went all out. They did the support. So fans really, and I still get emails from people saying, "Hey, when you guys come back? We love your shows," and it's the demand's still there. That's for sure.
Wow, everybody loves that. Russ, let's just quickly, I want to get back to Tony Jones because you guys and Meltzer were at the service. Tony,
yes.
Tony Fury let a lot of us know in advance. I just could not drive the 400 miles up there. Too many things down here, but we had done fully dedicated full hour shows. This is either the fourth or fifth time we've been talking about that. But tell us about if I don't know, because I'd always see at BTW shows. I don't know how many total APW shows, but maybe your relationship with Tony, his son Tony Jr., Anthony, and the service itself sounded like it was a really important event for a really important person.
Yeah, I think, if not mistaken, when I found out, my wife actually, I think she saw a post on Facebook, and she asked me, something happened to Tony? I go, I don't know. I haven't seen anything. So I reached out to Marcus, and I asked him, I said, hey, did something happen to Tony? And he's like, yeah, he had a heart attack, I think, and his son just called, and they would try to work on him for over an hour, and nothing happened. He ended up passing away. I was like, oh my God. So I started letting a lot of the boys know. I contacted Steve Rosano. I contacted Super Diablo. I contacted, my wife contacted Mike Modest and Vinny Massaro. And we were like, hey, did you hear? And they're like, Vinny, I think, was in LA watching the Dodger game. And I asked him, hey, did you hear what happened to Tony? He's like, no. And he was like, oh no. And, Mike, same thing. Mike Modest didn't know until we told him. And it's like, it was hard to believe, and it was a sad day. But I did contact Marcus and say, hey, if you find out anything service, let me know. And I had contacted a few other people after like a week or so, and I say, hey, any word on service? I was like, nope, nothing yet. So I found out literally like the day before. I saw it on Meltzer's dirt sheet, and I saw that he put information. I was like, oh, it's tomorrow. Wow, okay. So I started letting people know. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, I found out. Yeah, we're there. And it's like, okay, well, so I had to be there. So
who spoke? I don't know, Russ. Meltzer didn't speak, but who were amongst the guys that talked? Obviously, Mike Modest gave. You guys told me, and I read that he gave the most impassioned speech. But other guys, did Vinny Massaro talk? Or who can you remember?
Yeah, I said something in Tony Jones' behalf. Yeah,
Oh, good. I can't remember, Russ. So you did speak there. That's great.
Yeah, I talked about it on the show here, but anyway, it really was a tremendous tragedy, and it was an incredible service, and I think a lot of things that will be done in the future in the Bay Area will be done in his memory when it comes to wrestling. I think he'll be probably an iconic, Bay Area wrestling figure. Maybe not internationally. He never got that kind of acclaim. But I think when people want to think of like great stars that were just born and made for the San Francisco Bay Area, that would be Tony Jones. I think that's his legacy. And hard to argue that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Tony Jones was an amazing guy. Such a down to earth person. I don't think anybody has a bad thing to say about Tony Jones. I mean, I talked to Tony Jr. and I gave him my condolences, and I told him, I said, hey, I don't know if you remember, but I think your dad might have had his last match. And I go, yeah, he did, Matt. I remember that. I was there. But at most shows, I'd always run into Tony and his son. Whether it was APW, AEW, WWE shows, guaranteed to see Tony and his son there, always having a good time. I think when Sabu came down for APW, and I think it was just before he needed his hip replacement. I think he came with Genie, and
right.
Yeah, I think me and Tony got in line. We're like, yeah, he saw me getting in line with them. He's like, oh yeah, we got to support the boys. We got to support him. We got to help him out. So yeah, absolutely. So we got in line. We paid our money. We took pictures, and we helped him out. And that's just the type of guy Tony was. He was
paid for the hip replacement, and then he was great after. But she had helped him. She was doing like most of the work because he could barely move. She would throw chairs to him in the match.
Yep.
You remember?
Yeah.
That's made him there.
Yeah.
And but since he finally had that, here's a guy that would super glue his gig marks and stuff together. And when he had it, he was like transformed. He was physically back to, almost where he was. So it was great to see him health-wise. So,
He does it. When I seen him last year, at our show, he's just a shell of the man that he used to be, because ever since he lost Genie, he's not the same. Sabu, yeah, he's I don't know, he's just not the same. He's he said he doesn't sleep. He doesn't sleep a lot. He just stays up all night, and he just I think picked him up in the airport at the hotel. I got 4 in the morning, take him to the airport, and I go, "Did you get any rest?" He goes, "Nah, I don't sleep anymore." I go, "Oh, okay, well, sorry to hear that." So, yeah.
It was funny because his previous wife, Mibu, who he met in Japan, she barely spoke any English. You guys probably know. They had the van because he doesn't like flying, and they would drive like all over the place. So one of the earliest times when I managed him on those Gordon Scazzari 1990, 1991 Indies, and it was first starting, we had him on the Joel Goodhart show, the very last TWA show, where the Sheik was in the main event in a cage against Abbey, and it was just a stacked card. But Sheik, so we leave from Lansing, Michigan, and Sheik tells Sabu to drive Sheik's famous old Cadillac from the 70s all the way up to Philly. And so Sheik, or Sabu Terry was always the chauffeur kind of guy for Sheik. And, just a lot of good memories of them, because I guess I'm told by the Michigan guys that worked in his office, it's Sheik's only fan club. But Tony, one last thing. Well, his ring work was different, and he would bring, very few guys, like the Kurt Angles, they'll bring the amateur stuff and infuse it into their hybridized style. And Tony did that, I think, better than many, many people. And when I introduced him to Flair, that story, like I was going out with Flair, I asked Tony to come along, and he really was a mark for Flair. We took pictures, or I did, of Tony with Flair. But Flair knew about his athletic background, and he was then starting to ask Tony Jones about it. And Tony was thrilled to, not only be with his idol, but to talk one-on-one seriously. Rick, because we were away from all the fans, Rick was asking him legit questions about the stuff that Tony was doing and his weight training, and it was good to see Tony so happy. What a class, man! You don't meet a lot of guys like that.
No.
No,
he was super nice. He was super nice. Always, like I said, down to earth. So it was really shocking to hear the news.
So let's while we have a few minutes left, I'd like to know, what would you say are some of the greatest challenges of running a federation like the Stars of Wrestling to you?
The process of putting the show together is usually pretty simple, and it's easy on paper. All the problems always seem to happen either the week of, the night of, or the day of, with people always coming up with some excuse of, hey, I can't make it, I missed my flight, I'm not feeling well, and it's always literally at the last minute where we have to scrounge around and look for people, But outside of that, we don't have too much issues. I mean, like I said, we try to plan everything way ahead of time and book people. And, I don't think anybody's ever asked, like, well, who you put me up with? And we just tell them pretty much ahead of time, we're putting you there. Then no one ever says, I don't want to work with that person or anything like that. But it's pretty simple. Usually just the headache of the putting on the day of the show, trying to get to the building, and then, the building, we can't get into it till another hour or two later. And then we got the guys out there with the ring just waiting, and little snags like that, but not too much. I mean, we had a good individual that had the financial backing, so we were able to reach out to a lot of people and bring them in, and it helped out, But from that point on, it just we stopped for a minute, and we're just waiting to see him come back.
You guys had a terrific match. I forget which show, 3 or 4 in Alameda. Spanky Brian Kendrick against Jardy Franz, APW veteran. High flying, great match that I know Russ would have loved. And, because Kendrick had worked King of the Indies for APW, that 2-day thing in Vallejo that Russ managed on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were using Jardy France up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were still using Jardy. Yeah. Yeah.
Is he no longer in the biz?
I'm sorry?
Is he no longer wrestling? Maybe
No, not really. No.
And he wasn't at the funeral, so nobody
really-
really knew where he was at.
Yeah,
So
no, he didn't. I don't know if he knew. I don't know if he's around the area, but
or dropped out of the scene. Not everyone stays with the scene. It's even though it's kind of a bizarre family that we have of people who. That's something I brought up at the funeral is that there's wrestling brings together a lot of people that would never be connected any other way except through wrestling, and it creates this really bizarre family that you wind up really caring a lot about each other. When you travel on the road and you put together shows like that, and it's you against you guys, your troupe against the world, and trying to get everybody to come applaud you. It's you band together in a different way. It forms a weird kind of family. So that's what we all feel with the loss of Tony Jones is definitely the loss of somebody from our family. So in the meantime, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing for your next show and what the far-flung plans of Stars of Wrestling for the rest of 2024 is going to be all about.
Yeah.
And plug all coaches, Tony. Plug anything and everything you'd like to plug too.
Oh, right now we're going to have to start almost from scratch because pretty much all of our champions that we had are pretty much gone because Jacob Fatu was our champion, and obviously he's going to be going to the big house up there to the big leagues, and so we're going to have to find a crown new champion. So we're going to look around to see who can do that.
All volunteer. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So our women's champion is Jordan Blue. She's pretty popular around the area here. A lot. We use a lot of the local promotions around here. We've used there's South Bay Championship Wrestling. You got Gabe Ramirez. He sometimes helps on shows from time to time. As long as you use some of his people, he's okay with using. We use Charisma, which that's one of his girls, Lucha Girls. We use.
I've got a hint for you, Tony. Everybody loves tournaments.
Yes, right.
So if you don't have a champion, everybody loves tournaments. That's a booking.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So right now,
secret.
Yeah, right now that's what it looks like. We're going to be doing a tournament to crown new champions for everything. So that's what we're looking at. I just don't have a time frame. I don't have a date, and well, you got
to get the venue first, right?
Yeah, we do. And that's part of the reason why we changed the name, Mike. When we did with the Oaktown, all the shows other than the Moose Lodge was held in Oakland, and after that, every show after that was done in Alameda. And I kept telling Icebox, it really doesn't make sense to call us Oaktown Wrestling if we're not doing shows in Oakland,
Right.
And so that's when I said we should change it to something else, and we came up with the Stars of Wrestling because I go that sounds a little bit better, and just did so, and we went with that.
That's a real throwback, name to it for sure.
Yeah.
And that's.
Okay, so you got some other things apart from Stars of Wrestling you'd like to plug, or charities or things you're involved with?
No, not really. I wish I did, but I'm not. Like I said, right now I'm just attending shows. I go to as many shows I go. I go to Kirk's. I go to the West Coast Pro in San Francisco. I Gabe Ramirez's Pro Wrestling Revolution. I'm not really doing anything, and I'm just attending shows like I always do. I'm happy. It's my happy place to be at the shows. So.
Have you got socials that people can follow you, or where you might post stuff?
Yeah, I think on Twitter I'm at Real Tony Fury, and then on Instagram I'm at TFury19. I don't have a Facebook or anything, but yeah, those are the only two social medias that I do have. So, and then our Stars of Wrestling is SO Wrestling for Instagram and Twitter. So.
And then I have one final question for you. If you could book any two wrestlers in the world for your main event, doesn't matter who, what salary, whatever. You could book any two people. What match would you book right now?
Right now, I think I booked a show. I think I already booked it. Somebody had asked me that, and I did it. Moose asked to come back, and he would only charge us half price if you get to work with Jacob Fatu. Put it together, and we did it. So. He wanted to work with him so bad, and we did it. We did Jacob Fatu versus Moose, and that was our last match we did. So
wow. Well, no, I was gonna say you could, have if you wanted, you could have Brock Lesnar fight, a young Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
Real hybrid dream match like AEW Forbidden Door. Those guys have never touched, I don't think, before Stars of Wrestling.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. Tony.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time meeting ever. No, they've never done it, so we got to do it. So,
Well, we really look forward to having you again on when you are ready to do another show.
Absolutely.
And so we can help promote your show and get, some more fans in the seats. I know that's always a big thing. So
that always helps. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can tell us more about,
great guy, Tony Fury. Yep. Tony Fury, great guy, great wrestler too. We didn't even get into. Maybe the next time we have him on, which should be a lot easier for Tony, we'll talk about Tony Fury's in-ring and his matches and his career. But again, God bless Tony Jones, and much love to his family and everybody still as we mourn his passing. Such a great, wonderful human being.
Very true. All right, guys. Good having you on the show this week. And everyone, good night, everyone. We'll see y'all next week.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Peace. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Bruce.